I know installation videos are all make it look 1, 2, 3, so simple. Then you look at the videos and you watch them like, oh, now what do? I don't really know how to go about this thing. So what we wanted to do today, Jeff and I, who's our sales manager, what we wanted to do is interview Rob Klinc. Rob is our VP of operations. He works for our installation crews, and we wanted to pepper him with questions. Now, if Rob gets mad at us because we ask him too many questions, you'll just have to bear with us, but he just loves being on camera, doesn't he, Rob?
Oh, he loves it.
Yeah.
But he will be mad.
But he will be mad.
He will be
He will be mad. But we do want to ask him a lot of the questions that we hear from homeowners to make sure that you're getting the answers that you need in the detail that you do. So we're going to bring Rob out and we'll shoot him with a bunch of questions and hopefully he doesn't get mad at us.
So Rob, what would you say are the key tools you'll need to install these wall panels?
You need a 4-foot and a 2-foot level, a drill, an impact, and a track saw with a fine tooth blade on it is the best. You can use any fine tooth blade with any wood cutting, but a track saw gives you a nice perfect cut when you lay it down. And then hole saws to cut out for your plumbing fixtures and any other penetrations that are coming through.
If somebody was a DIYer, Rob, and they didn't have the tracks, for the track saw, what tools would be essential, you'd say, for a DIYer who maybe doesn't have the track saw?
Certainly a circular saw with a fine tooth blade will work. You just need to be steady with your cuts.
And Rob, to move these panels around and set the panels, I mean, I know you can grab them with your hands, but does it also make sense to get the Fibo grips?
The Fibo grips are really nice when you don't have a small tile pattern. On a bigger tile patterns, the suction cups work real well. It's a lot easier to snap the panels in with them, but not all patterns have the bigger tile format.
So these panels, Rob, how would you store them before you're ready to install?
The panels need to be stored flat, but ideally 48 to 72 hours before you're going to do your install. You'd want them to get them acclimated to the humidity in the house.
If you're a contractor, let's say, and you're not going to have the opportunity to deliver the panels 48 to 72 hours before the job because you don't want to go there twice, how would you store those panels to make sure that it's still going to work pretty well yet not, be acclimated in the home?
So typically when we're doing that, we'll be in the winter here and we're in Cleveland, Ohio. We'll bring them in the office and let them sit for 2 days before we take them out to the field.
Can you tell me, Rob, what comes in a standard kit?
Your panels, obviously, depending on how many you need for your job. The trim profiles, which come in 2 different sizes, a small L and a large L. You'll get 2 or 3 internal corners depending on the job, and your base profiles. And then all the screws, wipes, spray, caulk.
Yeah, everything comes in a kit except the backer board. Okay.
So Rob, step 1, what do you need to do first when you start this installation?
Okay, first of all, you need to put your shower pan or base or tub in place before get your plumbing lined up and get that set first, and then put the OSB over top of that, and that typically will go to the top of the tile flange, whether it's a tub or a shower pan.
Tell me why it's important to install the pan first.
But basically it's a waterproofing issue. So the pan goes in and they're made with flanges on them so that the OSB can come down to the top of that, and that helps prevent water from wicking up the top of the walls.
Rob, there's a lot of debate over what's the right backer board to use with the system. Should you use cement board? Should you use a moisture-resistant green board? Should you use plywood? Should you use OSB? Which of those systems do you say, hey, definitely stay away from those? And which systems do you think are the right ones to use, and sort of why?
Yeah, we want to stay with an OSB or a wood product because the screws bite into that product much better than they won't bite into a drywall or a tile backer board.
So Rob, what would you say the steps, like what's step 1 for somebody that's going to redo their bathroom and do their wall system?
Okay, step 1 is demo. You take all of the old material out, get it down to the studs, and then check your drywall. If your drywall is 1/2 inch, we use 1/2 inch OSB. If it's 5/8, then we fur that back wall out to make it so that it's flush with the drywall, the existing drywall.
What do you do if the walls just aren't plumb?
And so sometimes you'll get a bow in the studs, so we might have to plane that down. If it's got a belly or an indentation in it, then we have to shim that out to make this linear.
What if somebody says they want to go over old tile? What would you tell them? Good, bad?
Don't recommend going over old tile. There's usually a lot of damage behind there. Even if you just take the few tiles off that are damaged, behind that there's typically damage.
So Rob, what's that piece you're putting up now?
This is the base profile, which goes against the 3 walls that you're using for the Fibo panels.
Is there any tricks or anything that's really important when you're putting that base profile up?
It's got to be level, and we want to keep it about 1/8 of an inch off the ground.
When in the process, or what step would you put the base profile in?
That's right after the OSB goes on the board.
So pan, then OSB, then base profile.
That's correct.
And is it okay, sometimes you'll see in the Fibo instructions to use the strips, and sometimes you'll see the full sheets of OSB. Why are we using the full sheets? Is it okay to use the strips? What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
the reason we use the full sheets is we can screw the board in anywhere, so if there's an imperfection in the board, we can then shim it where it needs to go. In the strips, the other reason we use the full board is because when the strips are up, there's a lot of dead space and there's a lot of noise that can come through, so this acts as an insulator too.
So Rob, measuring and cutting the panels, how do you measure, how do you cut them to make them look best? Like if you're cutting a 36-inch left-hand wall, but your panels are 24 inches with a wide tile pattern.
Take from our starting point to the lip of the inside corner, and then we find the center, and then we transfer that center line onto our first Fibo panel, and then the balance of that will be on our second Fibo panel.
So the tile looks the same.
So the tile is centered.
Can someone who doesn't care about the symmetrics of it just put the full 24 in and cut the panel? And
Absolutely.
is there like a special blade that you would recommend? And as far as the valve, how much room do you usually want around that valve to leave for the pipe and everything?
So as far as the blade goes, any fine tooth wood blade will work depending on the size you need for the saw you're using. And then around any penetrations, we want to leave about 1/2 inch around any penetrations that are in through the OSB.
So say my bathroom, my walls are only 92 inches, but the panels are bigger. What do you do when the panels are too tall for your ceiling?
So if your panels are too tall, we always make our cuts from the top of the panel, and then we put an edge profile at the ceiling.
So if you cut it from the top, then automatically from the bottom up, they line up perfect.
Correct.
For the shower valve, when do you cut the hole for the shower valve? Do you cut them in the panels? How do you seal around that shower valve?
Yeah, so when we get to the shower valve, you measure off the back wall to where the shower valve is coming through, and then we'll drill a hole with the hole saw. And then any exposed wood on the interior of the panel gets sealed with the sealant. So our first panel, we start on the left-hand side, and the full Fibo panel has 2 parts to it, a tongue and a groove. And we want to cut off the groove, the tongue side. So depending on what your dimension is, you take that dimension, you split the panel if it's a tile pattern to get it even, and then you cut off the left side of what you're starting with. So when you start, this portion will be screwed to the wall. So all the bottom of the Fibo panels will need to be sealed using the sealant that goes into the base profile. I've cut my first panel and centered the tile line. Just checking for plumb. And we'll screw it in.
So Rob, how many screws would you recommend? How many do you normally put in when you're installing a panel?
Typically between 4 and 5 on a panel, about 18 to 24 inches. So the next step is to put the inside corner up temporarily. The inside corner goes on top of the base profile, and I'm putting this up, and then I'm going to get my dimension from the inside corner to the edge of the first panel. I'm going to take my measurement from the lip of the internal corner to the edge of the Fibo panel tile joint. So now I'm going to take off the internal corner and attach it to the panel that I just cut. There's a double-sided tape that'll go on the top of this panel. Okay, so now I'm going to put the sealant on the left side of the second panel, on the tongue.
So Rob, when you're putting that sealant on, how much is too much sealant?
All you need is the sealant to be about as far off the panel as the face of the panel is. So about 1/8 of an inch bead. Then this panel will start on an angle, and we'll work it into the next panel. So once this panel's seated, you'll see that the sealant has oozed out of the joint, and then I screw it into this back wall through the profile. In the installation kit, along with the screws, the install instructions, and the sealant, you get a wipes, a spray, and a finishing tool. So as the sealant's oozed out, we're going to take the spray and spray the sealant. And then wipe it clean with the finishing tool.
So Rob, that extra sealant you just took off, when do you usually take that off? Do you do it right away? Do you wait till all the walls are up? What would you recommend?
I recommend doing it right away, although the spray and the wipes that we use really knock down the consistency of it so it's pliable for a while. So you could do it in about half hour to 45 minutes easily.
But you don't want to wait till the next day.
No. First back panel, I'm going to take and put sealant in the channel of the internal corner. I always like to put a little extra in this bottom, in the corners. As you can see, we've cut off the tongue part of the first panel. So you always have to make sure you have a flat piece going into the internal corner.
So again, Rob's putting the polymer sealant that creates the aqua lock. It always goes on that smaller side, which is usually the left panel. And that's what goes in and locks to give you, again, the aqua seal. What are some of the tricks that you recommend that you do that enables that panel to lock in?
Sure. So a lot of times the angle at which you come in on and when you start to seat the panel makes a difference. So if you can get this panel out to somewhere in here where you're putting it in, and then working it in, kind of wiggling it back and forth to let it seat. If you have a bow in the back wall or in your OSB, sometimes when you screw it in, it sucks the panel in and creates an indentation. So if you see that where the top is in, or the bottom's in and the top's in and the middle's out, then we need to bring that middle out, so we shim that back.
And I notice when you screw in the screws, can you overscrew it? Can you screw them in too deep? If you do, does that cause any problems? Do you have to back them back out?
You want to just get them flush to this board. So this lip, get them flush to that. If you screw it too far, it's going to go all the way through.
Gotcha.
And if you don't screw it enough, that could cause you a problem to come in from this side. So for the finishing the edge of the panels, included in the kit is a small L profile and a large L profile. We like to use the small L profiles on the edge of the panels. And we're going to use our same sealant and put a bead inside here. Any excess that came off, you just wipe it right off. Now if you were to go all the way up to the ceiling and you had an uneven ceiling, they make a large L. So one end covers the panel and this end is about 7/8 of an inch long. So you can have the ability to take the difference out of the ceiling so that this looks more linear.
Well, I hope you learned a lot in these frequently asked questions about installing laminate wall panels, but if you want to learn more, what I'd recommend doing is first going to innovatewallpanels.com and or clicking on the link below in the description in YouTube, or giving us a call at 877-668-5888. We'd love to talk with you and answer even more of your specific questions about installing laminate wall panels.